Hi everyone, hope you're well. My name's Brandon Tilley of Smart Business Solutions. Just putting this video together for you today to discuss the recording of deferred rent, particularly for landlords. Now, obviously with the COVID-19 thing, a lot of landlords have deferred part of rental agreements and deferred them to the future. They've also waived part of those rental payments. So what we were hoping to do is probably just provide some clarity around how to account for that in Xero, and then on the back end of these agreements, how to then invoice for those deferred amounts. So these are my contact details here. If you've got any questions once you've watched the video, please feel free to get in touch. Just send me through an email and we can go through your circumstances and any issues you're having. Look, most of today's session, I will go through a demonstration in Xero, but there's a quick agenda here. So there'll be a couple of additional accounts required. So I'll show you how we can make those in the chart of accounts. I'll then go through a rental invoice as of today, sending one to your client to include the deferred and waived rent, really set it out clearly for them. A manual journal to then pick up the deferred rent and the rent receivable, and then I'll wrap it up by going through how to invoice for the deferred rent and then how to tidy up the deferred rent once it's invoiced. And if your client requests a statement of the amount of deferred rent and the payments they've made, I'll show you how we can allocate that too. So I'll just jump into Xero now and we'll get into it. So the first thing we're going to do is go to accounting and chart of accounts. Now, I have already created the two accounts we need to create. One's a current asset, one's a current liability. If you're going to do it yourself, you'd come to add account. You'd put in current asset. You'd select your code that's in line, and then you put in your name and save it. Now, the name for this one is rent receivable, and I've just called it tenant one. This is a good place to individualize these accounts for each of your tenants. If you've got more than one, that will allow you to sort of track how much each tenant is owing you in deferred rent. The other account I've created is this deferred rental income. So this is sort of what we'll get to in a minute. This is the other side of the entry for the rent receivable. This is the rental income we've pushed forward to the future, and so it's just going to sit as a current liability. I'll go through that shortly, but firstly, I'm just going to raise an invoice for rent payable. So in this case, we have a client, a tenant. The tenant pays $10,000 a month for rental income. We raised the invoice on the first day of the following month. It's due 14 days later. So for this one, it is going to be for April rent. You can see here, first line, April rent one, $10,000. That's the full amount of the rent. Then what we're going to do is we're going to break down the rent waived and rent deferred. We've got our rent for April, COVID-19 rent waived, and then we're just pretty well going to copy that and going to have rent deferred. So the agreement we've entered into with this tenant is a 25% reduction in rent. So that is rent waived, $2,500, and then we're deferring another 25% to the future periods. So realistically, at the end of the day, they're actually only paying 50% of the rent they would currently be paying, with 25% of that, the $2,500, to be collected in the future. So I'm going to prove that and push that through. So at the same time as sending that invoice, what we need to do is raise a manual journal. So I'm going to go new manual journal. The date is going to be the 1st of May. That's the date of the invoice. We're just going to call it April deferred rent. So this is where we're going to use those two accounts that we've created. So the first one is that rent receivable account. for tenant number 1, and the other one is at deferred rent. So all we're going to do is pick up this $2,500 that's been deferred, and I'll show you the effect of that on the balance sheet and what it looks like. But essentially we're saying $2,500 is going to be receivable in the future, and $2,500 is our deferred rental income. So I will post that and we'll jump across and I'll show you what the balance sheet currently looks like. And I might show you the profit and loss too, just for accuracy's sake. So we're going to set this to end of last month, being the 31st of May. So what I've done is I've actually put through a couple of other transactions. So if we click into this rent receivable, tenant 1, for this client, we are going to say that we agreed to defer their February, March, and April rent. And as you can see there's $2,500. So a total they owe us at the moment is $7,500. What the agreement we've entered into says is that from May, they're going to begin paying back that deferred rent. Their shop has been allowed to open again, and they're happy to now pay that back. Obviously, in your scenario, it's likely to be a bit longer a period, but just for the sake of this demonstration, we're just doing the 3 months. So if we come back to the balance sheet, what we'll see here is that our rent receivable is $7,500 and our deferred rental income is also $7,500. In the profit and loss, I'll just open the sales for this period, and I'll just take it back to the 1st of April just to give you a quick look. So you can see March rent, April rent in there. I think I've entered this invoice at the wrong date. I'll just adjust that now. That's done. So as it should. Yeah. So if we look at our sales, we can see here we've got our March rent, $10,000, less the rent waived, less the deferred rent, and then the same for April. And then our balance sheet, we've picked up those rent receivable amounts, and it's $7,500 owed. So what we're going to do now is just go through, and I'm going to prepare an invoice of a standard monthly rent, and then I'm going to include the deferred rent in this invoice. So it's going to be to tenant 1. We're going to say this is the invoice for May's rent, which they're paying in full on the agreement we have entered into. They're paying in full. So May rent, $10,000. Now what we're going to do here is the client has agreed to begin paying back the deferred rent as of May. So as of May, the client owes $7,500 in deferred rent. And the agreement we've entered into is they're going to pay that $7,500 across the life of their lease. So I'll just do it in here, so it's sort of set out clearly for you. Deferred rent is $7,500, and we're going to say the remaining term of the lease is 10 months. So this just becomes, I suppose, a simple maths problem. 7,500 divided by the 10 months. The client is going to be paying back $750 per month to ensure they pay that deferred rent. So how we're going to record that is we're going to just make a description here, repayment of deferred rent, payment 1 of 10. And I suppose it just sets out for them. They can sort of track that progress as they go along. They know how many deferred rental payments they've got left. And so that just brings the total of the invoice up to $10,750, excluding GST. And we're going to approve that. So I suppose, again, that just sets out for the client quite clearly what they're actually paying. Once we've done that, we're going to have to enter another manual journal now. So a new manual journal, SPS, repayment of deferred rent. And again, we're going to have it the same day the invoice went out, so the 1st of June. And in here, I'm just going to go in brackets, repayment 1 of 10. And so essentially we're going to just do the opposite of what we did last time. So we're going to go deferred rent and rent receivable. I'm just going to swap those around. I like to have the debits come first. So deferred rent, we're going to debit $750, and rent receivable, we're going to credit $750. So we're just picking up this amount that was invoiced here. I'm going to post that. So each time we send out an invoice with the rent deferral amount, we're going to post this repayment of deferred rent. So you can just come back into it and just copy it, roll it forward. You'll just make the relevant changes. You'll change that to a 2 each on both of them, and you'll set the date correctly. The amount won't change, and then you'll post it off. So what does that look like from a balance sheet and a profit and loss perspective? So if we come to our balance sheet and we're going to update it, we're just going to roll it forward to today. So we're going to include that 1st of June amount. And I'm going to open the rent receivable GL for you, and I'll also open the deferred rent GL for you. So if a client comes to you and says, okay, I have started paying my deferred rent back, I've made a number of payments, how much do I actually owe? You can come here and this will give you a quick breakdown. So you can see they've got deferred rent for Feb, March, April, and now they've got their first repayment of deferred rent, and so they still owe $6,750 or 9 repayments. So you can just export that as a PDF and just send it straight to the client. And then obviously the deferred rent file here is going to reflect that too. Now, again, this is why I said it's good to have individual files for the tenant. If you've got a number of tenants, you'll have a lot of different files, and it's just good to make sure that you're able to send them a PDF pretty quickly, easily, just to show them the exact number they owe you. Just in sales, we'll take this. Just checking here. This should have come through, but that invoice has not come through there. I've got the 1st of June 2015. That would be why it hasn't come through. I'll just make a change there. Update that. I'm going to update this here. And you can see the sales, 10,750, and this will break it down. So we'll have 2 line items here. We've got tenant 1, May rent, tenant 1, repayment of deferred rent, payment 1 of 10, and that breaks down your total. So look, hopefully that has cleared the issue up a little bit. Look, as I said, again, get in touch via email, and we can go from there if you've got any issues. Thank you.